Hey, welcome. Today, we are going to get into the real psychology behind why we seem to get stuck in the same old relationship ruts, and more importantly, how we can finally get out of them. Let's dive right in. You know that feeling, right? That sense of total déjà vu when you and your partner are having the exact same argument you had last week and the week before that? It's like you're both stuck reading from a script you never even knew you memorized.
And it almost always kicks off with these phrases, doesn't it? You never listen to me, you always do this. But look, these aren't just arguments, they're actually clues. They're symptoms of a much deeper, repeating pattern. And what if I told you that pattern isn't a dead end? It's actually a map. And today, we're going to learn how to read it together.
Okay, so to understand these patterns, we have to talk about the invisible baggage that every single one of us brings into our relationships. And let's be clear, this isn't a flaw, it's just part of being human. So let's go ahead and unpack what's really inside. So, what is emotional baggage? Well, you can think of it as a survival kit we packed way back in childhood. It's full of all our unmet needs, the clever ways we learned to cope with things, parts of our true selves we had to kind of hide away to fit in, and these deep unconscious beliefs we formed about how relationships work. These tools worked for us then, but in our adult relationships, yeah, they often start to cause more problems than they solve. So, just to recap, inside that baggage, we've got four key things: those childhood needs that didn't get met, the survival tricks we learned, those lost parts of who we really are, and the unconscious beliefs that run the show. Getting a handle on these is absolutely the first step to making a real change. So, where in the world does all this baggage come from? Well, our entire blueprint for relationships was basically written in the first 6 years of our lives. It happened across four really critical stages of our development. Let's take a look at how this all went down. Think of this timeline as like the emotional architecture of your life. During each of these four stages, we had a fundamental need. And if that need wasn't met consistently, well, that's when we developed these specific adaptations, these patterns that we're still running today. It all kicks off with connection. From the moment we're born up to age 2, our number one job is to feel safe and to trust our caregivers. But if that connection felt shaky or unpredictable, we might become an anxious adapter, clinging on for dear life, terrified of being left alone. Or if connection just wasn't really there, we might become an avoidant adapter, learning to tell ourselves, it's fine, I don't need anyone anyway. Then comes the exploration phase. When we're toddlers, we need the freedom to poke around and figure out the world, but we also need to know that home base is safe. So if our world felt too restrictive, we might grow into a dependent explorer, only feeling safe to try new stuff when we're attached to someone else. Or we could swing the other way and become a lone explorer, keeping our discoveries to ourselves because we learned it's just safer to go it alone. All right, between ages 3 and 4, we hit this massive stage, identity. And here, the core need is just to be seen and loved for exactly who we are. But if we got the message that we had to be someone else to be loved, we tend to develop one of two strategies. We become the diffuse self, a classic people pleaser with basically no boundaries, or we become the rigid self, who builds up walls and becomes totally inflexible to protect who they are inside. And the last of these early stages is all about competence. What we need more than anything here is encouragement for our trying, not just applause when we win. If we didn't get that, we might become a passive avoider who basically thinks, well, I'm not good at anything, so what's the point of even trying? Or we might become a relentless perfectionist, driven by this deep-seated belief that love is earned by being the absolute best. Whew, okay, so we've unpacked the baggage, we've seen where it comes from. Now for the million-dollar question. How do we even begin to change these patterns that are so deeply wired into us? Well, it all starts with a huge shift in how we see ourselves and our place in the world. For a long, long time, we've had this idea of the autonomous self, the belief that we're all these separate, independent little atoms floating around. But here's the kicker. All the research shows that this way of thinking, this feeling of being an isolated island, is actually linked to way higher rates of anxiety and depression. It's a lonely way to live. So, a much healthier, more accurate view is the relational self. This is the understanding that, hey, we are fundamentally shaped by our connections to other people. Our identity doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's co-created in that space between us and the people we love. But then there's this next level, the most healing perspective of all, the meta-personal self. This is that deep awareness that we are all interconnected, not just with our family and partners, but with everyone and everything. And what's so amazing is that this viewpoint is consistently linked to the absolute highest levels of happiness and well-being. And this quote just says it all, doesn't it? We aren't just isolated islands. We're each a unique individual drop of water, for sure, but we are all part of the same huge interconnected ocean. And when you can really feel that, suddenly your personal conflicts start to look a whole lot different. So, once we start seeing ourselves as connected, the real path to healthier relationships becomes crystal clear. And here's a hint. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about getting really, really good at the art of repair. Let's just get one thing straight right now. The goal is not a perfect relationship. The whole idea of a partnership with zero arguments or mistakes, it's a total fantasy. Every relationship, just like every person, is going to be messy and imperfect. And this right here, this is the secret sauce. The foundation of a strong, lasting relationship isn't about never messing up. It's about both people being willing and truly available to fix the damage when it inevitably happens. It's about being a good team when it comes to fixing things. So how do we actually do that? Well, there's a fantastic tool called the Imago Dialogue. It's just 3 simple steps. First, mirroring. You literally just repeat back what you heard your partner say. So what I'm hearing you say is, this just shows you're actually listening. Second, validation. You say something like, that makes sense. Acknowledging their reality is valid, even if you see it differently. And third, empathy. You try to imagine what they might be feeling and say it out loud. I can imagine you might be feeling really frustrated. It's not about agreeing, it's about connecting. So I want to leave you with this one thought to chew on. What if the next time that old familiar argument starts to bubble up, you don't see it as a crisis? What if instead you could see it as an invitation, an opportunity not to win, but to understand, to repair, and ultimately to connect even more deeply than you were before?